Hi gang. So, Math 055. This video is going to give you the solutions to the U-Try-Its from 6.4. But before we do that, I realized that I left out going over example 3. I think it was on a separate page, so sorry about that. I'm going to go over it now. So looking at this, first of all, you can see that x cannot equal 0. And as we look at it, also we know that x squared is going to be the common denominator. And so we're going to multiply all terms by x squared. And so here we would just be left with an x, and x times 2 is 2x. This would cancel out, so you'll have a -1. And then it would be a -3 times x squared, which would give you a -3x squared. Okay? So now I want to move this -x squared over to the left because it looks like it would allow me to factor this answer as a trinomial. And so remember, you multiply the first term times the last term, so you get 3x squared. And then we're looking for a product of 3x squared, which would give you a sum of 2x, which means it would have to be 3 times the -1. 3 plus a -1 gives you the 2x. So we'll add the x's to that. Now we're going to do the factor by grouping. Which gives us 3x squared plus 3x minus 1x minus 1. The common factor would be 3x. So we would have 3x times x plus 1. And then if we factor this part out, the common factor is a -1. So we get x plus 1. This would be a common binomial factor, and then we group the 3x minus 1, the common factors. Oops. Okay, so let's move that up. We're going to solve each parentheses. So the first parentheses, one of the solutions would be x is equal to a -1. On the second parenthesis, we're going to add 1, then we'll divide by 3. So x would be equal to 1/3. So our two solutions then would be a -1 and 1/3. And if we look back, x could not equal 0, so we're good, so our solution should check. Okay, so again, that was number 3 in your packet. I accidentally skipped over it. Okay, so now for the U-Try-Its. I'm going to take a little bit of time doing these, maybe a little more than I did before, because I think I went a little bit fast. So for number 1, first of all, the solution should be x is equal to 15/2. So if you didn't get 15/2, then you probably should really listen to this one. So looking at this, it looks like if x was a -2 or if x was a -6, that would give us 0. And so those would be the two solutions that x should not equal. So x cannot equal a -6 or a -2. All right, so then for this one, we've got the 2 and the 6, so a common denominator would be 6 because 2 divides into 6. So if we multiply all 3 terms by 6. So 6 times x gives us 6x. Whoops, sorry, I skipped. Sorry about that. Actually, 2 divides into 6 first to give us 3. So then 3 times x is 3x. This 6 cancels out, so we have plus x. And then we have 5 times 6, which is 30. So now we're going to add the 3x and the x, which gives us 4x. And then we'll divide by 4. So 30 over 4, if we divide both of those by 2, we would get 15 halves. So x is equal to 15 halves. Let's look at the next one. Okay, so for number 2, I'm checking to be sure I wrote it down correctly because it looks kind of goofy to me. Yeah, that's not the answer. Okay, it's x plus 4 over x minus 3 is equal to 4 over 5. Alrighty, so we've got x minus 3 as a denominator and 5. So that means our denominator, our common denominator, needs to be 5 times x minus 3. And so this would have to be also 5 times x minus 3. Okay, so let's start at the left. So the x minus 3 would cancel out, which just leaves us with the 5, so we'll distribute that. So to distribute it, we get 5x plus 20. Then on the other side of the equation, the 5 cancels out, so we get 4 times x and 4 times the negative 3, which gives us 4x minus 12. Okay, so now it doesn't really matter where we start. I am going to start by taking away the 4x. So we've got now x plus 20 is equal to a negative 12. Okay, so then I would take away the 20. And it gives us a negative 32 is equal to x. And that is correct. X is equal to a negative 32. I'm going to go back to the beginning just to see. So x is not equal to a positive 3, x is not equal to a negative 5, so that solution is good. All right, so then for number 3, I'll let you know what the answer is going to be again, so if you want to skip, you can skip ahead. The answer for number 3 should be 15 over x. So let's see how we get that. So first of all, we got a 9, 6y, and a y. So y cannot equal 0, and it can't equal a negative 9. Okay, all right, so the common denominator should be 18y. The reason it's 18 is because 6 and 9 need the common multiple of 18. So we're going to multiply all 3 terms by 18y. So when we do this with the first term, the y cancels out, so I just have 18 times 1, which is 18. With the second term, the 6 will divide into the 18 3 times, and the y's cancel out, so then I have 1 times 3, which is 3. And then the last term, 9 goes into itself once, and it goes into 18 twice, and 8 times 2 is 16, and then we can't forget about the y. So after you've canceled things out, you should have 18 minus 3 is equal to 16y. Okay, so I would just say 18 take away 3 is 15. And then I need that y by itself, so I divide by 15. Whoops, I don't divide by 15, I divide by 16, sorry. Got a little ahead of myself. So I divide by 16. Wow, that looks nasty. Cancels out, so y then is equal to 15 over 16, which can't be reduced, and that was not one of our solutions. So 15 over 16 is a good solution. Okay, all right, number 4. So we've got y minus 2 and y plus 2 for our common denominators, or for our denominators, and they will also be the common denominators. And then if I solve this, if I add 2, then that means 2 minus 2 would equal 0. So a positive 2 could not be a solution. And if I take away 2 there, that means x can also not equal a negative 2. So we know that x cannot equal a positive 2 or a negative 2. All right, so we need to now find our common denominator, which I guess we already talked about. It's going to be x minus 2 and x plus 2. So we get x minus 2, x plus 2. Okay. So x minus 2 and x minus 2 cancel out. So now we have x plus 2 times x plus 4 on the left. The x plus 2 cancels out. So on the right, we've got x minus 3 times x minus 2. So we need to FOIL these out. And so I'm going to start on the left. X times x would be x squared. X times 4 is 4x. 2 times x is 2x. And 2 times 4 is 8. We should combine our like terms, so we end up with x squared plus 6x plus 8. Okay, I'll give you a chance to catch up with that one. So if you need more time, you might want to pause it and then continue. So the next thing we're going to do is FOIL out the x minus 3 and the x plus 2. So x times x is x squared. X times a negative 2 is a negative 2x. A negative 3 times x is a negative 3x. A negative 3 times a negative 2 is a positive 6. If we combine the like terms, we end up with x squared minus 5x plus 6. And again, I'll give you a few seconds to catch up. All right. Again, if you're not quite ready, you might want to pause it and then start it, the video again. Okay, so I am going to start by getting rid of these x squares. So an x squared minus an x squared gets rid of those. So now we have x squared is equal to a negative 5x plus 6. So it doesn't matter where I start. I think I will start by adding the 6x. No, let's not do that. Let's take away the 5x. So if I take away the 5x, that cancels out. So on the right, I've got 6. Here, I get 6 take away 5, which is x. So I've got x plus 8. So on the left, x plus 8, and on the right, it's equal to 6. Again, I'll give you a few seconds to catch up. Well, wait a minute. I just see a mistake I made. So instead of doing this whole video over, and maybe you caught it yourselves. So let's go back to here. So we had, let's see. Shouldn't have erased the whole thing. So we've got 6x plus 8 is equal to a negative 5x plus 6. And so if we were to add 5x, we get 11x. And I took it away for some reason. So there we go. So we've got 11x plus 8 is equal to 6. We add the 5x to get rid of it. Then we would take away the 8, and that's going to give us 11x is equal to a negative 2. And so then we would just need to divide by 11, so the x is all by itself, and we get a negative 2 over 11. Okay, all right, let's keep moving. Number 5. So number 5, you probably notice right away that x cannot equal a positive 3, because if we were to add 3, then we would have 0 in our denominator. And by the way, the solution for number 5 is no solution. So if you got no solution for that one, you must have gotten a positive 3 for an answer. So x cannot equal a positive 3. Well, let's go ahead and work it out to see why that is. We have a common denominator, and so I am going to multiply by that common denominator just so that we can get rid of the denominators. And so I do that, and now they're both gone. So we've got x plus 2 is equal to 5. And then I would go ahead and take away the 2. So x is equal to a positive 3. X can't equal a positive 3, so for this, we have no solution. So no solution for number 5. Okay. Number 6. Looking at number 6, I'm really aware of how this denominator is not this one and it's not this one, but it's close to both of them. And I recognize that if I were to multiply that whole expression by a negative 1, it would make this denominator a positive x minus 2. So that's what I'm going to begin with. I'm going to multiply, and really I'm just multiplying it by a 1, a negative 1 over a negative 1. So a negative 1 times x would give me a negative x. A negative 1 times a negative 1 is going to give me a positive 1. A -1 times 2 gives me a -2, and a -1 times x gives me a positive x. So now I have a common denominator. Again, I'm going to pause just so you can take time to think about that. So now I'm going to look at the denominators because I want to know what x cannot equal. And so by looking at those three denominators, I realize that x cannot equal a positive 2 and x cannot equal a -2. Okay, so I'll keep that in my mind and I'll maybe write that up over here where it's out of the way. Okay, so our common denominator is going to be a double denominator. It's going to be x minus 2 and x plus 2. So, just kind of fit it in there. So I get rid of the x minus 2 on the bottom. So now I have x plus 2 times x. And that's equal to x plus 2 cancels out. So I've got 5 times x minus 2. Here, I guess I didn't rewrite the denominator. I did. Okay. X minus 2 and x minus 2 cancel out. And so I can't just forget about this negative sign. So before I multiply it times the x plus 2, I'm going to use this negative sign. So it's going to be a negative times a negative, which gives me a positive x. And then a negative times a positive 1 would give me a -1. So now I have a positive x minus 1 times x plus 2. Again, let me go over that again. This is where a lot of mistakes could be made because you may just forget about that subtraction sign. And so I go ahead and multiply it out so it's kind of like there's parentheses around it. So a negative times a negative is a positive, and a -1 is the outcome of a negative times a positive 1. And we're going to multiply that times the rest of the common denominator. Okay, so on the left, all we need to do is to multiply the x times the x and the x times the 2. So we've got x squared plus 2x. And let's see. And actually, since we multiply, we really don't need that. Well, I guess we do. There we go. I don't want it hugging it. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and distribute the 5. So we get 5x. 5 times a -2 is a -10. And then here, we're going to distribute the x minus 1 to the x plus 2. So x times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. A -1 times x is a -x. A -1 times 2 is a -2. I could combine some like terms on the right. There's a lot of terms there. So we've got 5x plus 2x minus x. So if we add those three together, we get 6x. Then we have a -10 and a -2, which would give us a -12. And then we just had the x squared all by itself. I'd like to rewrite it. I'm going to give you a minute again to look at this. so let's go ahead and start solving it. I'm gonna take away the x squared, which leaves us with 2x is equal to 6x minus 12. Then I'm going to take away the 6x, which gives me a negative 4x is equal to a negative 12. Again, I'll give you a second to catch up. So then I need to have the x all by itself, so I'm going to divide by a negative 4. So x is equal to 12 divided by 4 is 3. So x is equal to 3. And if we go back, 3 was not a solution. It said x could not equal 2 or x could not equal a negative 2. So we're good with x is equal to 3. Last one of the you-try-its. I'll go ahead and give you the solution to this. So the solution for number 7 is x is equal to 6 or x is equal to a negative 3. Okay. So for this one, what we're going to do is substitute the f of a for the 3. So that means that it will be 3 is equal to a minus 18 over a. So for this one, if a ends up being 0, then it can't be a solution. So a cannot equal 0. Okay, so as we solve this, the common denominator is a, so we need to multiply all 3 terms by a. So 3 times a times a, and a. So 3 times a is 3a. A times a is a squared. And this would just cancel out. So we have 3a is equal to a squared minus 18. This looks very, very much like a trinomial. So I hope you can kind of see that. The a squared and the 3a and the negative 18. So in order to make it a trinomial that we could factor, I'm going to take away a 3a. So then we've got a squared minus 3a minus 18 is equal to 0. And this is kind of the factoring that almost everybody likes to do because we don't have to do the multiplication part. We just have to figure out 2 numbers that give us a product of a negative 18 that also have a sum of a negative 3. So 9 times 2, 3 times 6, 18 times 1. Those would be our choices. It looks like 3 times 6 would give us 18, and then if the 6 was negative, it would give us a sum of a negative 3. So I think that's what we're going to use. So we'll have a minus 6 and a plus 3. Whoops. I think the board's tired. I've been using it a lot today. Here we go. I'm just going to erase this to give myself a little more room. Okay, so a minus 6, a plus 3, we're going to go ahead and solve both of those. So if we take away 3, we've got a is equal to a negative 3. If we add 6, we've got a is equal to a positive 6. And our solutions could not be a is equal to 0. So our 2 solutions are a negative 3 and a positive 6. There we go. So that is the last of the You Try It. I would guess that you may have some more questions, but I can't answer those right now. So what the next step is, tomorrow, which is Tuesday, from 10:30 to 11:30, I am hoping to do a video chat with anyone who needs some help. If you start your homework and you're finding you're having trouble with homework, this would be another good time to do that. And so what I would like for you guys to do is to send me your email addresses, and I will add you to a Zoom account. And then that's how I'm going to be doing the video chat tomorrow, is with a Zoom account. And so I just need you to send me your emails. Now, it could be that because you're not getting a whole lot of extra time to understand how to do this, I get it, I really do. And so I just want you to try to sign up for the Zoom account by maybe Wednesday even, and then Wednesday I will also offer another time that we could do a video chat. If you have questions, you could also give me a call, okay? Just or text me. Maybe text me would be better. Just remember, I have 4 classes, so I'm doing these kind of things for every class, and I just need your help a little bit by understanding that I may not be able to answer your questions right away. So you could actually send me a question by email, or if you just wanted to text me and let me know that you also have a question, that would be good too. Okay, so that's all for now, and your homework is still listed on the homework sheet. For this first time, I'm just going to have you do 6.4, so don't worry about 6.5. Let's just get through 6.4, and I think that'll be good. And I will hopefully talk to you all either tomorrow or on Wednesday. Okay, take care.